everyone. Woo! And welcome to Making Your Business Finance Sexy. We're already at this point of the year. We're all tired and we're all slightly drunk. So apologies if we have any revelations as we go along. But no, welcome everyone to the webinar. And this time is going to be a nice quick episode because it's Christmas time and we're all ready to go to bed.
Correct.
Yes.
We've had enough. 2021. Move on.
Shuffle off. We've all had enough of you. We've all had enough of you. So we're ready to go. We're ready to go home and go to bed.
That's it.
Of course, yes, like Christmas is a time for family, and for some of us, we're still going to be working in our businesses very heavily until the right last minute. But for a majority of small businesses that I've talked to, Roy, a lot of them have already hit the holiday session because they weren't going to be able to get their services, or they're not going to be able to get their stock out in time due to the postage and shipping situations. Have you come across that with any of the people that you speak to?
No, most of the people I've got are still going flat stick up to Thursday at least. Both in service industries and creating products for people locally. So that adds a different dimension to if you're going to a regional or a national market. Yeah, there's some really troubling aspects with transport. There's a problem with a diesel fuel additive where 80% of the product that goes into this additive comes from China. And China has stopped exporting, and they tell us it's not tit for tat in the recent, diplomatic dust up. They're saying it's because China needs it for themselves. Look, and that's all good and fine. But the problem is, if we don't, we've got about 5 weeks of supply of this stuff left. And if we don't get our, I believe I saw today the Australian government has got things happening for production locally, but it could have serious impacts across the board. Like half the trucking fleet around Australia could grind to a halt if we don't solve this problem in the next few weeks. So sorry for that cheery bit at Christmas time, but that's the reality.
No, it's very true, Roy.
Yeah, but I think for us at a micro level, I think people are just focusing on 2021. We're done. We just want to reset. And now with Omicron making its way through the environment, people are just done. And at least at the moment, the state governments are taking a little bit more of I don't know what you say, Zoe, a bit more wait and see, but 2,500 cases a day in New South Wales, 1,300 in Victoria. I just pray for the people who are double vaxxed that they've done the right thing and not give noise and attitude to that other distraction in the marketplace.
Exactly.
Because we need positive retail and positive services, because that's what's going to lift and change the environment. People getting back to work, people earning their income, people being able to have choice and do to a degree the normality of what was pre-COVID. But I think if we have to have a vaccination and we need to wear a mask, I'm 63, so I'm compromised because of adult asthma. I don't see it. I just say it's a no-brainer. But other people seem to have a bit of a weird idea on what they should and shouldn't do. But this isn't the forum to get into that conversation. What I'm saying is most people will do what they need to do to get back to a normal life as best they can.
Yes, and of course, all of us will be doing our best to get back to that. Well, normalcy, considering it's been 2 years, but a sense of choice and the ability to actually choose what you want to do. Because especially over this past couple of weeks, I have felt slightly safer about going out. I've actually been out to a couple of different events or different places, usually outdoors, usually the opportunity just to make sure that I'm keeping my distance and taking all necessary precautions. Yeah, I just hopefully that 2022, at least for the first couple of months, are going to retain the normalcy. And I'm just a bit worried that, very much like yourself, that it's going to kind of steer back in, because we all thought that 2021 was going to be magical.
As I say, it's here to stay. But I did see some positive news. I was watching the afternoon news, and there was a grab between a couple of young women, and they were really positive. They said, look, it is what it is. When we go out, we try and sit in an outdoor setting. If we go out entertaining, we try and go to rooftop bars. I don't see that as a particularly bad problem to have to go and sit at a rooftop bar. It might be a bit of a problem in winter, but at this time of the year, that's a fantastic way to while away a few hours. I just think most people want to get behind hospitality and tourism and retail just to get, because there's so many people that now that the government, it can't have the hand in the till forever. And as I say, we've got to get the economy open. We've got to get the world back into our, international students and so forth, because the country is really alive when we've got all these things vibing, and particularly in Geelong, where we do have a very, very, very good university, and people that have been entrenched in education and teaching and lecturing, they've taken a big hit along with everyone else. And, sometimes university gets a bit of a bad rap for it's an easy time. You're not getting a job. You're just educating yourself. It can't be that hard. But I totally disagree with that perspective, because without universities and without learning, how do we change the narrative and move forward in a positive way?
Exactly. And hopefully that will definitely, well, I do hope that does change in the 2022. What I do want to ask you, Roy, is looking back on the year that has been, of course, there's been a lot of lockdown and a lot of unforeseen things. Well, some foreseen, some unforeseen in regards to everything revolving around business and what we've had to do to make sure to keep everyone safe. In your reflection, can you name the top 3 things that have either impacted you or impacted your clients, or be them positive or negative? Probably I want to skew you towards the positive, just for today.
I think the really amazing thing that I've seen, particularly with the 2 larger businesses that I look after in Geelong, it's resilience. They've found a way. The biggest one had to stay open because they service the trucking industry with spare parts, so they're considered an essential service, and that threw up some really difficult challenges to how to manage the workflow from home and so forth. But we found a way. And the other one, which you're aware of, is my sweet tooth, lovely young lady running a business called Sugar and Slice. She is amazing. She just gets on with it. She has 3 kids, a husband that works away from home, and she just finds a way. So resilience, number one, and initiative and ingenuity, I think. Necessity is the mother of invention, I think, is probably a good one to trot out at this stage, though. But I think a lot of, on the negative side, what has impacted a lot of people I've spoken to was the isolation, just that last lockdown where we were under the same rules as what Melbourne was. God only knows how they did it for 13 weeks, in 2020. For me, I found that difficult, that I couldn't phone up and say, okay, let's meet for a coffee. Let's do this, let's do that. But all that had gone, and probably towards the last 2 or 3 weeks of it, I found it really challenging to stay focused because of that isolation was really starting to wear into my psyche. So, but on the upside, I've learned a whole new way to be resilient.
No, that's very good to hear, because that's the same thing that I've heard for a lot of my clients. And adaptability, despite the fact that everything kicked off in 2020 of last year, for some reason, a lot of people had this idea that, we were going to be fine in 2021. We were all going to get fixed. It was all going to be sorted itself out. Of course.
Yeah, well, I was one of them. Yeah, I thought it was a 12 to 18 month thing. And I'm really not... I'm just sort of taking a holding pattern, thinking what 2022 is going to unfold on that basis. So sorry, I interrupted you. So you keep going.
No, I understand that prevalence, because personally, because of the research that I'd done as well, it's not that I'd done my own research. I listened to the actual experts. And it was,
but you have a health issue too, like me. So you've got to take a responsibility for your own health, and you've got to make the decisions that are right for you, and that fit with your partner and fit with what you do as a whole.
exactly.
So anyway,
and what I found very useful this year, especially when it came to small businesses, was the sense of adaptability. Because last year was mainly being thrown into the pan. Like it was.
Well, no one knew. Yeah.
No one knew. No one was prepared, and there was just a whole bunch of running around like a headless chook the entire time. And then I felt 2021 kind of became from the frying pan into the fire. Like, I know it's not the greatest analogy, but it gave people that understanding of, okay, this is not going to be a one and done thing. This is not a short-term thing. This thing is going to impact us for a very, very long time. Very much like the financial crisis of 2008. People still talk about that because that's one of the most pivotal points. Like they either lost their job, they lost their home. Like all these things like come from there also are going to happen with the pandemic that we are still definitely in. So one thing that I've definitely seen, and I've really enjoyed seeing, is a lot of small businesses or a lot of people starting small businesses, but having it work for them, in the sense that not saying that this wasn't working for anyone previous to the pandemic, but there was a sense of when people outside of this business sphere, outside of what we do, when they would see someone doing a business, they would see it's a lot of work. You got to put your whole self in. You got to make it work. Where a lot of people saw, especially during the pandemic, is you can make a small business work for you. You can put as much in as you want out. And say, for example, there's one person who I'm a very big fan of, called Peachy Greetings. She does she does cards. She recycles, and she creates those cards. And she does a whole bunch of stuff. And she was able to during COVID, she was able to put that on the side, get back to it when she could. But because she was, taking care of her kids, doing all the other things that she had to do.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely.
While being impacted by the pandemic. Plus, I obviously don't want to disclose anything publicly, but doing a lot of family duties that she had to do because we're in a pandemic. Correct. And it was very beautiful to see that she actually said that was the best thing about having a small business was because I had the ability to adapt. To be able to let something rest, pick it up when I needed to.
I'd like to actually take that a bit further because the great thing I've seen now, look, corporatization of the world really started in the 80s, 90s, and the noughties, and what that did and as everyone became wealth, particularly, I'll admit I'm part of the baby boomers that probably have been the most selfish, elitist group of people on this planet, because we're the one holding the majority of the wealth and screw everyone else. But what I'm finding now is the little guy has got a great opportunity to either change their work environment or set up their own business, because people have found that they can do their job from home. And what that gives, say, someone like yourself, if you're working for a studio, you're not in a great space, they're a bit heavy-handed to how they get things done. If you've been working for home for 18 months and getting things done, getting your job done, you say, why aren't I doing this for myself? This is a great opportunity. I don't know whether you're familiar, there's a thing called the Great Resignation that's sweeping the world, where well, it's fantastic because it's kind of like, I don't know, you may or may not have seen the film, but an old Australian actor that's no longer with us, a guy called Peter Finch, he really came to prominence with a film, I think it was called Newsreader or News something, and his catchphrase was sticking his head out the window and yelling, "I'm as mad as hell and I'm not taking it anymore." And I really think the, I don't know, what do you call the next generations, X, Z, Y, millennials, whatever, are just saying, well, screw you, we can do this our way. And I think the trouble is a lot of bigger organisations have got dinosaurs like me still in charge, like in the age group, the 60 to 70s, and like Rupert Murdoch's still going and he's nearly 90. these guys are in a different dimension towards inter-company relationships. And people like yourself, if someone comes to me and says, Roy, I'm done with my job, I think I can do this better, I will go the big yards to say, okay, what's your focus? How do you want to achieve it? Let's get it done. Because that, even though there's a lot of risk and lack of security going from employment to being self-employed, but in your field in particular, Zoe, in the social media realm, there's opportunity and there's different ways of meeting obligations, and you just got to back yourself. And if you're good at what you do, and if more importantly, if you have 4 or 5 people that can support your business, like clients or customers that say, hey, when you do this, come and see me, then I think there's fantastic opportunity out there in the next generation. So that's why this young entrepreneurial thing is really important, to give people the confidence to have a crack and also say, I've got your back if you need help with the compliance.
Exactly, because there's a lot of people that I have met who have started businesses fairly recently because of the pandemic and everything that has happened, and they took the plunge either because, as you mentioned, Roy, that they're already doing it from home, they're already doing this work, and they're taking the plunge because they've always been thinking about it. Because there's the great resignation, but there's also just this great change because people have seen this impact on the world. And how much that has impacted everyone's lives, to the point where people are seeing that I should just take this chance because I don't know if I'm ever going to get the opportunity to again.
The only thing I don't want is the pendulum to go too far and everyone starts working from home, because you lose that connectability. I do, coming from an era in the 80s where being in a robust dynamic environment can be quite fulfilling. But on the same breath, in the 90s, I was in probably 3 or 4 organisations that were just so soul-destroying because of management's really poor attitude towards their staff, and getting things done and self-esteem was absolutely just not even on their radar. And even one organisation, the managing director was off running his own business and having an affair with the secretary so that she could cover his ass at the office while he was building fortunes elsewhere and taking a full salary from this business. You just, but that was the 90s. Now, obviously, I'd be surprised if that same thing could still happen now with checks and balances and compliance. But my point being is, exactly, you never know. But my point being is, for people in that late 20s, early 30s, particularly single with no financial obligations other than to earn a living for themselves, and if you can provide a gun service without have to, where you can charge a good rate of return and not basically do it with a computer and a printer and connectability to the web, anything could happen.
Exactly. There's less and less hindrances nowadays. And one thing that I did notice, and I am very thankful for, is there was a lot of people that were saying that the coronavirus didn't exactly impact us too much because we were already working remotely. We were already doing all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see that a lot of these larger companies, but also small businesses, have been able to see or adapt. It's unfortunate they've been forced to, despite the fact that they've had usually a fair bit of opportunity to. But it's good to see that they've actually taken that on. They've taken the reins and they've just went, let's just do this because...
The cynical side of me, particularly around the environment and what, big business, and I'll take the supermarkets as an example. Why did it take an environmental protest and upsurge of young people to get them? They could have made these decisions years ago because it wasn't on their radar. It was anyone else's problem, and I'm thinking, well, okay, your big businesses, your monoliths, you could have thought about this as good corporate citizens a long time ago. So I'm with you, Zoe. I hope there's a lot of good companies that are pivoting and seeing the benefits of a mixed environment where you spend some time at home and you come into the office. The people I think that are really going to be challenged are the ones that work in Melbourne, say 5 or 10 Ks from the CBD. You're going to be on crowded trams, you're going to be on crowded trains, and you're still going to have an expectation to be in your CBD office. And I totally understand people saying, no, that's not going to happen. particularly older people, sort of 50 plus, if they're particularly with Omicron, it does get out of control, and you see someone not wearing a mask, and you might be double dosed and boosted still, but the jury's still out as to how effective that's going to be against Omicron stopping you get it. They say, yes, it'll be less effective, but I'm still keen to say, okay, I'm taking these things. I don't want to get it. I want to be protected 100%. Whether that's unrealistic or not, I don't know, Zoe, but I totally get it. If someone says, no, I'm not taking the risk of getting on public transport on a full train, I totally get it. And if I can do something from home and I can look after myself, well, that's what I'm going to do. So, 2022 is going to be really interesting on that front, Zoe.
Speaking of 2022, in the last 10 minutes of our session today, I would like to know what predictions that you have for 2022, be them around business or be them personal predictions, or whatever you feel like for the new year.
I would love to see the groundswell of people taking responsibility for themselves continue. Like today, the New South Wales Premier, even though their Omicron cases are skyrocketing, they said it's about time people take responsibility for themselves, and I think that is so spot on. Instead of saying, "Okay, government, what are you going to do for me, and how are you going to do it?" And the majority of people will take that view. I kind of hope the anti-vaxxer negativity dies away a bit, and to a degree it's fed by media. But my point is, everyone has a voice, but I want in 2022 respect my right to have the injections and to have the booster, and I'll respect your rights not to have them. But these people are saying, all these things are at risk. Well, hey, I'm not going to take that risk because I believe in the science and I believe in the government structure. If I'm a fool for doing that, well, then fool me. So the resilience that people are building up to get things done, let's not listen to the noise and the distraction around us. Let's just get on and build our lives for our partners, our family, and the community as a whole. Now, whether that comes to fruition, I just want to see that positivity that people are generating now. We've got freedom. We're back to what we're doing to hopefully improve themselves, improve their work prospects, and improve their overall affinity with life. And just, if they need to change something, take responsibility for yourself and make it happen. On the negativity, who knows? So the only thing that really is going to be a problem, I really would like to see Australia and China back off. That area is something that's, that tension around the world with the US and China and stuff. I think it's probably at the worst it's been for a lot of years. I'd really like to see some sort of diplomatic resolution for everyone to take a chill pill and step back and say, hey, this does work better if we can get along, but I'm not hopeful on that. And that's why I come back to people power changing things around the environment. Like I'm now, every time I make a decision about food, when I'm trying to make a good decision around food, packaging, can I recycle? Even though I won't be one person, but I want to make sure my carbon footprint is as small as it can be. So I think we have to, I think above all else, Zoe, it's the care for the environment that I think for me is my priority, next year. And I can take that sort of liberty because I'm more towards the end of my working career rather than at the start. But as a baby boomer, the exception to the rule, I would love to see the world left in a better place than what we've turned it into in the last 30 years, particularly the baby boomer generation. I'll probably get a lot of flack for that, but that's just what I feel.
No, you're standing up for what you believe in.
Yep.
And 2022, I believe negatively, we're going to have another lockdown, no matter what. I lost Roy. Oh no. Roy said their piece. Hopefully they'll come back to us on the feed in a sec. Will they come back to us? Maybe. Yes. There we go. Got Roy back. I thought you were gonna leave me because I was gonna have say
no. It's I think the internet between 6 and 7 is a little bit unstable.
Well, hopefully that'll be another thing that I'll touch on before we finish up for today. But I believe in New Year, negatively, unfortunately, we'll probably have another lockdown in 2022. I don't see us avoiding it any other way.
Well, it's happening in Europe.
Despite how the governments are trying. We'll see
Yeah.
how that goes.
Yeah.
But I think positively, I think that, as you mentioned before, Ro, that change will continue to change. That the growth of that environmental impact will continue to grow. And I also believe that there will be a lot more focus, not from the government on small business, because the government doesn't care about small business, no matter how much they say they do. But when it comes to individual groups or support, there is this there's always been this hashtag of shop local and this impact of, always buy local, blah, blah, blah. That metric has always been around, but it's never really been heeded by the larger community as a whole as the push goes forward.
Correct.
And as you mentioned, Roy, about the, realistically we have 5 weeks left of a fuel additive to diesel. I think people are going to be turning to more local sources because, of course, local sources still have to get their imports from somewhere. But then there will be.
We just have to see our local communities as our tribe. The Indigenous people talk about their mobs and their loyalty to their mobs and their spirituality to their mobs is what I see the negative energy in the community at the moment. It's all about me and my rights, and I think we've just got to shift away from that. And I know this is an old head talking, but I think to the diggers and the people that went through the First World War, the Great Depression, the Second World War, they'd be horrified at some of the things that they would see in our society and what we've become. So I kind of take, because that's what my parents did. They as children, they went through the Great Depression. Dad went off to the Second World War. So I kind of have that affinity. Hey, hang on. We're here doing this because of stuff 50, 60, 70, 80, 100 years ago. And we're just disconnecting from it. And I really hope through perhaps maybe the Indigenous movement may be a starting point that we start to just think about our culture and our history in a different way.
Exactly. And I do continue to hope that the trend of changing place names back to original traditional place names continues and even grows exponentially. I really do hope so. Even though it is in gesture, a token gesture, it is still a gesture to then start.
But the symbolism, even it's the symbolism and the recognition of their forefathers, because we can't dispute it. We came and took over the country. We invaded. We came in the late 1770s and colonised Australia, and some of the history that I'm just becoming things I'm reading and the massacres and the genocide episodes that happened in the 1770s and the 1800s you're just horrified that that's Australian history, but it's our history. We have to acknowledge it. So anyway, that's my platform to just say, okay, this superficial, all about me. We are just organisms in a big melting pot, but it's this. I have rights and I need to be looked after in this way because I believe I have a right to do so. I think that's the biggest attitude that's damaging society at the moment. And
hopefully that will change over the 2021 period.
2022.
That's what I meant to say. I'm getting my years confused already, Roy. But speaking of 2022, the reason that we haven't promoted our January event just yet, because we've got some special stuff in the works, but we don't want to say anything just yet because things are being confirmed. It's Christmas time. Everyone's taking a break.
Yep.
So are we. So over this Christmas time, we're going to take a bit of a break, and then in the new year, we'll have probably a slightly different look. We'll have with different things happening, and we may or may not have a guest for our webinar starting as in 2022.
Yeah,
but
I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge all your fine work, Zoe, and the other people I would like to acknowledge through your efforts that have come to our environment. Andrew and Simone from Aspect Accounting. Is that right? Ascend Accounting. Was really, really terrific to meet them both and to have Andrew as part of our networking discussion. So, we're really looking forward to having those sorts of impacts for us going forward as well. But, as it's kind of watch this space, we've got some really interesting thoughts about what we should do for the business environment. But above all, the collaboration that Zoe and I have got, it's about supporting young people who have ideas, who want to do well, and need that help to understand that compliance doesn't necessarily need to kill your creative genius.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I look forward to seeing you in the new year, Roy. I hope you have a beautiful time over this Christmas and New Year's break. And
Yeah.
I'm sure we will talk at some point, probably
Absolutely.
in the new year, about various different things. But
Yeah.
I want to thank you, everyone, for watching this year. I forgot how many times we've done this now, or how many webinars we're into now. But I had a lot of great feedback from a lot of you. So feel free to DM, feel free to comment, feel free to interact. And we'll make sure to implement any of your ideas that you guys have, because we've had a couple of those already.
And above all, stay safe and your families, and have a wonderful Christmas, and look forward to a stellar 2022.
2022, we can do this. All right.
We can.
Bye.